Hello and welcome to the Undressing the Spirit podcast, where sex and spirit go hand in hand. Join me, Tamara Powell, on a no-holds-barred adventure into the psyche and beyond every conceivable limit. Welcome back to Undressing the Spirit. I'm your host, Tamara Powell, and I could not be more thrilled that you are here. On today's conversation, I am joined once again by the incredible, the incomparable Alexander Cavucci for Volume 4 of our Cracked Open series. And today, we definitely have a juicy one for you. We are talking all about self-objectification and objectification in general, actually. So many of us are used to hearing it vilified, and certainly for many good reasons, it should be at times. No one should be treated like just a piece of meat, right? However, what many also miss is the delicious, juicy, positive side of self-objectification. Yeah, that's right. You heard me right. Don't start throwing tomatoes just yet. From a psychological and a mating behaviors perspective, it turns out there is actually something really, really good about some healthy self-objectification. So pull up a chair, get comfy, and let the games begin. Welcome to the Cracked Open series. I'm Tamara Powell.
And I'm Alexander Cavucci.
And we believe that we're all really just shells hoping to be chiseled open so we can see the universe within.
We hope to pave the way for you if you're looking for a place to be cracked open, unraveled, and join us on this journey.
So we'll show you ours if you'll show us yours. Hey, Alex.
Hey, Tamara. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's my birthday.
I know. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I woke up this morning and saw that, knowing that we had this conversation set up. And I was like, oh, man, I get to spend her birthday with her.
Yes. Super. And it's a full moon today.
Ooh.
By the time people watch this, I know the world is going to be on fire.
Oh, I know.
Yes. Which is perfect for today's conversation, self-objectification.
Now, I'll be honest with you, Tamara. I looked this up. I know I've heard this term a lot in my life. I've experienced this a lot from myself and others, but I looked it up. And because to be honest, this is something that even though it is so pervasive in our society and so it's surrounding us all the time, quietly, out loud, all these different ways, I felt like I don't really know how to pinpoint what that is. And so I was actually curious what you would define self-objectification as.
Great question. So I think society is really used to objectification. Like we've been talking about that for decades, and the feminist movement really shed a light on that, and for a great reason. Women, and it happens to men too, but let's just tackle the female side of it, have had millennia of being devalued or objectified, which really means I'm just looking at you through one lens. It's more about like, what can you provide for me? And what's interesting is that in the last 20 or 30 years, psychologists have now been fascinated by the ability of the psyche to engage in self-objectification, where it's no longer someone else doing it to me. It's me devaluing myself or only looking at myself through one side of things. And what I'm super excited about today's conversation is that I happen to know that it can also be an incredibly healthy thing. And I think people miss that so much. So I want to unpack it in all the ways with you. I'm super excited about today's conversation.
I'm super pumped too. And I love that you just said that. So in essence, what I'm hearing is objectification. You are an object of mine. You are playing a role for me, for my, for my benefit, versus self-objectification. I am an object. I see myself as an object. I put myself in that role as an object, whether, as you said, for negative or positive outcomes.
Right. I think it's a very narrowed, laser focused point of view where I'm looking at myself or someone else through one specific thing. So, like when we're used to standard objectification, I could see a hot guy or a hot girl walk by me at Target and instantly be like, right?
Yeah,
Like,
want some of that. Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And so I may forget in that second about it's not even so much about forgetting, but I am weaning out any other information, extraneous information about that person. Is he or she a
Mm.
parent? Are they whatever? In that moment, I'm looking at their attractive qualities, their sense of otherness. And what I'm bringing this conversation around to is that we have the ability to do that to ourselves. And it can either be incredibly empowering or really devastating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think not a lot of people have looked at the empowering side of it, though
Mhm.
I'm sure we've all experienced it. But I know that a lot of people have experienced this in a negative way,
For
whether
sure.
through body, sex, you know, all those kind of sticky spots we get into.
Absolutely. And so the research shows that self objectification is some common examples of it are like excessive mirror looking, like you're you're checking yourself over and over, taking those frequent selfies. I happen to love a good selfie though. Um, critiquing one's appearance and their reflection or photos, comparing oneself to images in the media and to peers. And so all of that sounds really negative. And it is because it gets associated with things like body shame, anxiety, depression, eating disorders, you name it. But I promise you there is a healthy side of this that we're going to get into as well.
And funny too, all of that sounds negative, but all of that sounds so normal, right? Like
It is.
I think, when we say terms like objectification and self-objectification, it sounds a little bit, because that tends to be not a commonly used term, maybe a commonly thought term, who knows? I think it's easy for us as a society, as individuals as well, to forget when we are self objectifying or to not even be aware that we're doing it, right? So I could be self objectifying when I'm looking in the mirror a little too long, right? Like,
Mhm.
and I may not notice that's the same thing, self objectification, as when I had an eating disorder and thought the only way I would be lovable if I was small enough. So it's the same thing on different levels, different scenarios. And it's really, really interesting to see that.
Absolutely. I was just remembering as you were talking, one of the ways that it popped up for me most frequently is anytime I would go out on the town with my friends. You walk into the club and instantly I see myself outside of myself and I'm attempting to walk in, with that like swagger and be
Yeah, that's right.
confident. And instantly I'm sizing myself up to the other women in the room. If I can't be skinnier than her, I'm going to be a hell of a lot more charismatic and
Mm,
entertaining. So it certainly hits me there big time. And then I have worked with women, I'm approaching, today's my birthday, turned 38 today, approaching
okay.
that. Well, luckily, I think the culture is changing, but in the past, there has been this idea that, oh my God, 40, you're just like over the hill and really grappling with does that mean that I'm going to lose my desirability?
Right. Yeah.
And
And I
why do
think
I even care?
that's changed a lot in recent years. And maybe it was because I was a child, but I remember growing up thinking 40 was old.
Me
And
too.
that could have easily been because we were at a young age, and I thought fifth graders were old when I was a third grader. But I've also heard throughout the course of my life, my parents talking and saying like, well, once you get to 50, like it's all downhill, or
Mhm.
like 40 is really like middle age or whatever. And
Right.
maybe sure, technically, but I think over the course of the last few decades, we've come to understand it in a different way and are in essence exploring bringing that youthfulness and that like desirability and excitement and zest well into not only our 40s, but our 50s, 60s, and so on.
Hell yes. I mean, as a mother of two teenage daughters now, does my body look the same as it did in my 20s? No, but I'll tell you what, I feel hella more sexy now than I ever did. And I think it's about mindset, which
Totally.
is why I'm so excited about today's conversation. Because if all of our listeners are honest, you cannot tell me that you've not really craved at some point or another wanting to be the object of someone's affection, the object of someone's desirability, the object of someone's pride. So this even comes down to children looking at their caregivers and wanting them to see them as successful and worthy of pride.
So let me ask you, do you think we can even, I mean, this just came up. Do you even think that we can exist without self-objectification?
No, the psyche can't do it. No.
Right. Yet we have really only looked at what is so negative about it, or really only honed in on. And, you know, I say this as a generalization, of course, but we've really honed in on where it's negative, what it creates and causes, when in reality, we're all doing this all the time. I mean, I still want to be the object of desire for my partner. And in fact, when I am not, or when we get a little too comfortable, or when she's like, let's just get out of the way, whatever, you know, I'm like, excuse me, no, I want to be an object.
I want body worship.
Right. I want you to like desire me. I want you to not be able to stand, you know, waiting.
Not having me.
Right. Not having me. And so, yeah, that can be a really, really empowering thing. And so I think that's interesting. We have tended to look at it as something negative, at least in my experience. And I think that's linked to objectification, right?
Right.
But it's actually something that's incredibly A, natural, B, common, and C, can be incredibly positive.
Yes. And that to me as a counselor and a coach, and I know it's the same for you because I've watched your lives, is what we want our clients to feel. We want them to feel empowered and that they're the one making the choice. Right. And so that's the biggest gift I want to give everyone listening today is you get to decide what to do with, you know, wanting to be somebody else's object of anything. Are there creepers out there? Hell yes. Sorry. Unfortunately, it's a matter of life. I am so glad that the feminist movement and even beyond then, you know, the legal system is having conversations about objectification in a negative way. You know, certainly it is also associated with human trafficking and with, you know, compulsive porn use in a way where the brain takes that too far and forgets the integration of the person behind their whatever arousal. But beyond that, not so much tackling that part today. If you don't get comfortable with this idea, you're missing out, my friend.
Yeah. Missing out and probably on the defense, right?
Totally on the defense.
It's like almost a matter of fighting this thing or, right, or fighting the way that other people can do it to us, right? Or embracing, understanding what it is, A, that we want, B, that we're comfortable with, and C, getting deeper into our own desires and our own understanding of desire and using that, utilizing that as a tool on our behalf. Because I think, as I mentioned to you earlier, off record, I want to be objectified by Dre, my partner.
Hell yes.
But if there is some creep, somebody that makes me uncomfortable, trying to take me or whatever sexually, that is not okay with me, right? And the way that I know that is because I am in touch with my desires. I am in touch with my own power. I'm in touch with the fact that I'm okay when I have boundaries around, Dre, objectify me. Sure, throw me down on the bed and take me. But that is a boundary that I've created and leaves a lot of people out, right? And so I think I love that you mentioned it's really empowering ourselves to not only know, A, that we're doing it, but how to enjoy it.
Absolutely. So when I start thinking about when is objectification healthy, for me, instantly, it's when it adds to self-confidence. When I feel that rush, that spark of, I know you want me. Right. You know, when it gives me that validation, not in an unhealthy way. You and I talked about that in volume 3, I think, of like when we're craving validation to the point where it's disempowering. It doesn't just add to it. It's not just the gravy on top or the cherry to our ice cream sundae. It's when I become like an emotional colander and people could give me compliments and it's just running right on through. And 5 minutes later, I need you to remind me again, remind me again, remind me again. That is not what we're talking about today. That's unhealthy. So when objectification adds to self-confidence, I think is the very first hallmarker that we need to look at.
So Tamara, how do we get there? How does one, let's say somebody's listening and they're like, shit, like I look in the mirror all day because I don't feel worthy, or I'm taking selfies because I'm so emotionally fractured that I'm trying to gain any kind of self-esteem possible from the outside world, people's comments, whatever. How do we take it from there, or any variation of that, to I know what I want, I own myself, and it is now adding to my life instead of band-aiding, that's a new word, everybody.
Love it.
Band-aiding over, the areas I feel I am lacking.
I think there's a twofold answer, as with everything in life.
Yeah.
Number one, it's about reframing the way that you look at yourself and the way that you look at objectification. The thing that you are craving is probably something that you already have, quite honestly. You have to remember your core essence, like whatever it is that is Alex or Tamara or whoever else is listening, is not just a set of tits and ass or great biceps or, our achievements. There's this beingness that's beyond that. And when you can get comfortable and get practiced with tapping back into who you really are and your authenticity, it makes the craving go down, because someone cannot offer us something that we don't already have, quite frankly. I know that's trippy, but
I know we all look for it, though.
We all look for it. And so that is the second piece, is really normalizing it, recognizing it is healthy to want compliments and to receive them graciously. We should all be walking around attempting to bring out the best in other people and to be the mirror for them, letting them know that we see that thing in them. So, shitting on yourself because you took a great selfie and posted it and someone else told you that was narcissistic is not going to get you anywhere, my dear.
Right. So in essence, then what you're saying is to swing the needle from our unhealthy tendencies or the negativity we've associated with self-objectification, to swing that needle over to utilizing it as a positive tool on our behalf for our own enhancement, we come back to ourselves.
Right. It has to start with self-awareness. And this is where anyone who follows me knows I'm a huge Enneagram nut. I think, self-assessments like that, take the Enneagram and take the psychological version. It's $12. $12 to help figure yourself out is amazing, because we all come into this planet with some, certain hardwired tendencies probably, but then based on our early childhood experiences, our history, our culture, we all attempt to get our needs met in ways that either become healthy and are validated and conditioned well, or very unhealthy. And so one of us may really crave, a sense of worthiness. Someone else might really crave a sense of like, do you love me? Or am I competent? And if that doesn't go well early on, that's where we start to see compulsivity. And that's where I think we start tipping those scales, as you said, towards unhealthy self-objectification, where no matter how much I give it to you, you're never going to be satisfied with it. We've all dated someone like that. It's exhausting for them and for you. Yeah.
And to be quite honest, I was very much like that before I knew that. And I think on some levels, it's still a lesson that I learn a lot, right? It's still, we have shadows and habits of our old ways of thinking. And I think that knowing that and still continually moving towards yourself, right? Towards yourself, whether that is gaining an understanding of what, first of all, I've been saying that word wrong. Enneagram. I've been saying Enneagram.
Yes. I've been saying Enneagram. I don't know. Perineum, perineum.
I learned something new. I learn something new every time I talk to you. I was also saying your name wrong for a really long time as well. So maybe I need to work on my.
That's all good. Will likes to call me Tamara. It's fine.
Oh, perfect. And so essentially it's really understanding and witnessing and having awareness of your patterns, also loving yourself through them, I think, and continually finding ways to come back to yourself, whether that is through the Enneagram or meditation or spirituality or sexuality or whatever.
All of it.
Yeah. Yeah. All of it.
Yeah. So to give people an example, on the Enneagram, I am a strong type 7. And so I'm the enthusiast. I'm the cheerleader. I am just at my core, when I am happy and grounded, I am naturally like Joy from that Pixar movie, Inside Out. I can't help it. I want to experience all the things, and I want everyone else to enjoy the experience with me. Like, I'm constantly running around. This is my sacred contact, why I'm a spiritual empowerment coach, because I'm constantly running around being like, do you not see this? This is fucking magical. Like, enjoy this thing with me. I want everyone to experience that essence of joy, and each type has their own with that. But here's where those levels of being become so important, because I can, if my needs aren't met and I don't feel like someone is perceiving me the way that I want them to, they're not seeing me as somebody that brings joy to their life, they're not experiencing the same magic that I am in that moment, my feelings can get hurt if I'm not careful. And then I can slide down towards like performing rather than just being, and attempting to give to other people what I think they want. And that's very unhealthy. I keep wanting to say sex objectification. That's a thing, but self objectification. And what's funny is the Enneagram even points out that, like, when I sit and meditate, if I'm not careful and grounded, I'll like jump right out of it as soon as that timer's done. I'm like, ding, on to the next thing. And it's like what the Buddhists call hungry ghost. Like, I'm insatiable. And this can show up in illicit affairs or in gambling, or like the deadly sin for a type 7 would be gluttony, not so much in eating, but in trying to continually acquire new experiences, jump from one high to another high to another high.
Right.
And so it's important to know yourself. Yes.
Yeah, I'm a 4, and which in some books is called the romantic, and in some books is called the individualist. And the dominant emotion of that is shame, right? And so I notice a lot of times, a lot of the self-talk that I have has a little twinge of shame in it, right? So for example, let's use your meditation example. You're ready to go, go, go. I sit down, and the minute my mind goes somewhere else, I'm like, oh, I'm so bad at this, right? Like, I'm so bad at this. And so, and I've noticed that, you know, I've dealt with shame for no apparent reason and for a lot of reasons in my life. It's just like kind of there, ashamed of who I am, ashamed of myself. But the more that I understand that, the more I can see that as like, oh, I'm doing that shame thing again. Okay. Right. I'm doing that shame thing again, where I think that I'm just a shameful human being for having been born, right? For no real reason. And that allows me to remove myself from it, which one could also argue is a benefit of self-objectification, right? Like that is me separating from that. That is, am I getting that way off?
You are so right.
Okay. No. Okay. Making sure.
Absolutely. It also explains then for you, I'm not poking at you, but to give examples for our listeners, you know, the eating disorder. And this is the downside of self-objectification. When you're looking at yourself, when you have the sense of spectatoring, looking at yourself outside of yourself and judging yourself, and it's critiquing and perfectionism and all of that. If you're not grounded, it will absolutely show up elsewhere. And so what's fascinating is I'm talking to you, I see you have a tendency to internalize those things, and I have a tendency to externalize. On to the next thing. It's not blowing up those bridges. I push people away. Oh, you're not enjoying this with me? Fuck you. I didn't want to enjoy it with you anyway.
Right. Meanwhile, I'm like, what's wrong with me? What do I need to fix? What do I need to fix? What do I need to fix? Thus adding to feelings of inadequacy. Right. I know 4s really struggle with feelings of inadequacy. Yeah.
We're two sides to the same coin, because think about how unattractive that is on both parts for other people to look at both of us. Like, you're over there wallowing in self-deprecation, and I'm over there giving everyone the middle finger. Like, yes. Which is just two different presentations of self-objectification. So I'm hoping by now that, you know, the light bulbs are going off in our listeners' minds of all of the many ways that this can start to show up, and why this is such a powerful concept to really grapple with and come to your own terms with.
Yeah.
So let's move into the common things that I see in therapy. And I can't wait to hear about some of your personal experiences and with your own clients as well as a coach. Since one of my specialties is in sexuality, I see self-objectification often show up in the bedroom. So when couples come in and they're struggling with a lack of initiating sex, or they just don't feel like the other person wants them, they won't come in using these terms at first because they're looking at the surface, as we all do, where they're just like, he doesn't seem to want me like he used to, or she won't let me go down on her, or I don't know, we just never wanted at the same time. And a big component of it, in my opinion, is often a failure to get comfortable with self-objectification. And so I want to read you this quote from the book, The Erotic Mind by Jack Morin, which I highly recommend, and I'll put a link in the show notes. But I'm going to warn you right now, there's a lot in there. You're probably going to have to take one chapter at a time. It's a little clinical, but it's a great read for anybody who's interested in how this type of thing works. And so Jack says, when you see someone who looks sexy, it seems as if it is that person making you feel aroused, even though the source of arousal is in your own mind and body. The sexy other is simply a stimulus and, at least to a degree, an object. The nature of lust is to objectify, a reality that can be troublesome for many people. According to one popular line of thinking, to see a person as an object is to do him or her a grave injustice. People must always be regarded in their entirety, not merely used for selfish gratification. Focusing on just a part of someone for sexual kicks, for example, voluptuous breasts, bulging biceps, or genitals, for instance, may even be considered a form of victimization. Like most aspects of erotic life, lusty objectification isn't so simple. Obviously, we've been unpacking that already. At its best, it is an effective source of validation and approval. Having a desired partner perceive you as the object of desire can be flattering and exhilarating. Both men and women, although by no means all, crave opportunities to be responded to as sex objects, and more than a few bemoan the fact that it happens to them rarely. And as a society, we spend billions of dollars and untold hours trying to make ourselves attractive sexual objects. So to objectify is also externalize, to recognize the desired one as the other. That is, to see clearly that he or she is outside oneself. This quality of otherness is absolutely essential for attraction. Not only is the object separated from the self, but that person is now invested with sufficient value to make him or her worthy of pursuit. One of the most beneficial features of lusty objectification is how it facilitates selective perceptions and idealizations. When you lust after someone, you naturally emphasize the qualities you find most appealing.
So interesting.
Right.
And as you were talking, I remembered actually a very sexual relationship I had with somebody in college, in university years. I remember I would express often to her like how much I wanted her, right? And we would do that to each other. But there was a sense of, I remember apologizing to her once, like, I don't want to make you feel like an object. And it was very interesting to me because I didn't even really think about this stuff at the time. I just kind of knew what objectification was, from one person to other. And I remember very clearly thinking, I don't want to be like those gross dudes who just want to like get laid, right? And so I was like, I don't want to do that to her. And she came back at me and was like, Alex, do you not realize how much I love when you do that? And it was very shocking to me at the time because I had already taken on the internal role of like, great, now I'm being that gross dude who just like, wants to get laid. When in reality, what I was doing was serving one of her needs.
Yes.
And she was enjoying that role. And man, I wish I understood some of this stuff back then because I think I would have had a lot more fun. But
You would have. But you'd have been chasing her around, no problem.
Yeah. But I also recognized on the other side too, right? Like I loved when she was objectifying me and always wanted it. And yet I didn't recognize that she may feel the same when I do it. So I think it's very interesting. And I love that quote that you read. I love that concept. So powerful. I think it's, incredibly powerful.
It is. It is. This is what I feel like separates people who have great sex lives from people who don't and are always very polarized. So another aspect of healthy objectification is when it can add to playfulness in sex. That's how you'll know if you're on the healthy side of things,
right.
And not coming at it from a place of clinginess or neediness. And what's interesting is that I've never worried about them looking at me as creepy. I worried at them looking at me as clingy.
Right.
Or like insatiable. And because we all know that we're still working on really celebrating female sexuality. We've come a long way, but women who wanted sex back in the 1800s were considered nymphomaniacs. They made it a fucking psychological disorder.
Right.
So and growing up for me in the Christian church, there was not this sense of freedom. And so I want to take it back to even manner of dress. I've always had this fear that self-objectification could lead towards vanity or, again, that lasciviousness, all these great words that the church as a whole tends to use, right? Basically just meaning she a hoe, like she a vain petty hoe. And I think that plays out in the back of my mind still. So my relationship with Will has been such a brilliant corrective emotional experience because when we were talking about this last night, prepping for this episode, it dawned on me that one of the reasons that we have been so great together is neither of us has ever really turned the other one down or not added to that playfulness. I roll him the ball, so to speak, and he rolls it back. If he comes out of the shower butt naked and is like, hey there, do you happen to have any Grey Poupon? I'm like, look at you, Hercules, you know?
Yeah.
He in that moment is attempting to be an object for me, a sex object. Right. He's attempting to be objectified. And it is so hurtful. I watch couples do this all the time where they get caught up in this standoffishness. That's stupid, or that's childish, or he didn't cook for me yesterday or clean for me, or he hasn't helped out with the kids. I'm not saying that those issues don't need to be tackled. I'm just saying we really lose an opportunity when we do that, when we don't turn around and be like, yeah, girl, I see you, baby.
Yeah. And really, really allowing them to stand firm in that, and then thus creating that positive association with it, right? Mm-hmm. And creating that ability to integrate it into ourselves and or vice versa, right? Integrate ourselves into it. And I think that's really, really powerful.
Yes. So one of the most common ways that people self-objectify without even realizing it is in oral sex. And so, because that is a very giving, submissive position to put oneself in.
Right.
We get turned on. If you get turned on by doing that, the turn on actually comes from you, like Jack was talking about. It comes from you getting off on that person, getting off on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned this to me before recording, and I was like, bing, 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 bing. Oh, wow, 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 right? All these like little fireworks going off, like, oh, okay. I see this. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And some people can even have an orgasm that way. And the reason why, being in the giving role, not the receiving role, because their brain gets so conditioned to be, turned on by the erotic nature of delivering pleasure to their partner, that people take it wrong all the time. I hear a lot of women, it happens with men too, but a lot of women's biggest reason that they don't want to give oral sex, they're like, oh, it's so debasing. It's so objectifying. And I'm like, you're missing out on the beauty of that.
Right.
Yes, it is. Take it though. Make it yours.
And that's all what we do with it, right? That's all what the story around it is, what we make it mean. Mm-hmm. And we have control over what we make it mean.
Yes. And it's also in the way, if we're talking about relationships, the way our partner makes them feel. You were talking about before, like when someone comes on creepy and you don't want that, your brain certainly shuts off then. Right. And so for sure, when we date someone who does not make it healthy, playful, safe feeling to go down on them when it's more of a like they're shoving their head down towards their crotch.
Right.
That's nope. Social psychology kicks in. And the second that you tell me I have to do something, I don't want to do it unless we're engaged in a DS playful relationship.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Love it.
I love it. All of this stuff.
Me too. Let me talk about the third thing that I think of when objectification is healthy, and it's when it's integrative and balanced, right? We're not trying to go to either end of the spectrum. So Jack goes on to say, lust by its very nature objectifies, at least to a degree. But if you can experience lust as an integral part of your total self, because you can't divorce your sexuality. I don't care what people say. Lusty objectification is balanced by your capacities to empathize with and respect others. And so, for example, while you may fantasize about being taken by someone or even taking someone sexually against his or her will, you will be able to draw a clear line between fantasy and behavior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. This is where we get into sexual scripts, which is a whole nother podcast, but lust and objectification is necessary and it's healthy. And you'll know when it's healthy, when it's integrative and balanced, when it's like Tamara is a spiritual being and a sexual being and an intellectual being and an emotional being.
Right. Not
just
an
one
object.
thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's really powerful. I mean, I feel like I myself, along with the listeners, are kind of like head nodding over here, like, yeah, right? Because it's not often that, for myself included, it's not often that I engage in conversations that really kind of push the envelope or, and you and I, before recording, we were like, where are we going to go with this? Let's just find out. But we even started to unfold a little bit, realizing just how much there was and realizing that even just a 40-minute conversation is still kind of just scratching the surface, right? And then not to mention all of the little aspects of where it is, because you mentioned that you talk to your clients a lot about self-objectification in terms of sexuality and sexual relations, where I see it a lot in body, right? Body image. That's what I've experienced a lot.
Totally.
A good amount of my clients have been too nervous to do something because they're too fat, or too nervous to be visible in their business because their body doesn't look good or whatever. And so it's interesting. It's even blowing my mind here now as we speak to see all the different facets of where it lives.
And how that plays out in multiple ways. So when you talk to me about body image, that's something that hits me home. I'm the heaviest I've ever been in life. And I can see that making me live small if I allow it to when I, go out with other people or even, in the bedroom. Suddenly I'm like not as wanting to be on top, for example, if I allow that to run down that rabbit trail, because I'm like, oh shit, he can see all of my body right now. And this is where I personally bring myself back to self-objectification and remind myself that he gets off the best and the most when I am confident and excited to be there with him. Right. It has nothing to do with, a spare tire or some jiggle there. In fact, if I even am like, yeah, you like it when it jiggles, like he's like, yeah, I do. Like it's not even a thing.
Right.
But it can show up in so many areas.
So many, and the stories that we tell ourselves can be really either damaging or empowering, right? It can either be because, you're really confident when you just decide to be. When you decide to be and understand.
People hate that answer, by the way.
I know. But it's really, when you decide to be, and deciding to be may require some work, right? May require some trauma healing, may require some understanding your Enneagram. It may require I don't know.
It does. You're right.
Whatever it is, right? It requires things, yes. But first, the decision has to be made. And you can create that sense of self-confidence at the drop of a hat the more you are in touch with who you are. Because like you said, you could either succumb to the story of my body, or you can be like, my body. Like he likes that, right?
Yes.
And that is relatively minor mind shift with an incredibly different path to go down and outcome. I think that's fascinating.
Right, because here's where focusing back on self-objectification is ironically easier at times, if you allow it to be, than objectifying. So in that moment, if I'm self-conscious because I'm on top and worried about what he's thinking, if I am looking at him and trying so hard to make him happy and focus, basically trying to objectify him, that is much harder for me personally than turning that back around and being like, what about me? What about my pleasure right now?
Right.
I deserve this. I deserve to be the object of his desire.
Right. Yeah. It's all so fascinating. And it all, the more we talk about it and the more you talk about it, the more I realize it does come down to awareness and decisions, right?
Yep. People hate it, but it's true.
I
Sorry,
know.
loves. It's so funny to me the way the human psyche works. They really want it to be some complicated answer. And I'm like, no, sometimes it is just choosing, taking responsibility over it. And like when you make yourself responsible for your own orgasm, well, shit, life gets so much easier.
Right.
When you recognize that even when I am staring at, Will's cute ass or whatever, I'm the one responsible for my arousal. Like that quote said, it's not him, it's my brain.
Right. And I think that that's kind of unsexy for some, right? Who want to look for the answer. And I know that I've been there, and I sometimes still grapple with, like, what do you mean there's no like long, drawn out one way of doing things that fixes everything for me? But it always comes back to the same thing. Getting to know myself, checking myself, understanding myself, and making decisions from that place.
Right. And so at the end of the day, as we start to move towards closing this conversation, I want to tap back into how do you know when you're sliding into the unhealthy side of things? And it really is about self-confidence. Sorry, loves. If you are confident, then any behavior that you engage in, even if it is casual sex, is an act of affirmation for your soul. Because any behavior can be an act of affirmation or an act of aggression. It's all in how you're using it. And so when I work with clients, for example, who are in DS relationships, dominant submission, that's something that a lot of people are like, oh, well, that's got to be unhealthy. That's self-objectification at the extreme, right? Number one, I'm like, oh, you clearly don't get it, because that is a place where self-objectification is actually the healthiest when done right, because you are offering yourself up as a gift. And in fact, the dom in that situation is one of the most loving partners on the planet, because all of their attention is focused on the sub's needs, in the same way that the sub is attempting to be the object for the dom's pleasure. The sub gets off knowing that they're pleasing the dom. The dom gets off by knowing that they have set up a scenario, a play scene for the sub to engage back. And so I love this quote from Consensual Sadomasochism that says, speaking only for ourselves, when we top, we don't want to play with people who think badly of themselves. We want someone's bottoming to be a worthy gift. Similarly, when we bottom, we give a great deal. A top who cannot recognize that gift is not likely to be able to receive all we have to offer, nor is she able to give much back to us. Oh, pen drop.
Yeah, I know. I'm like I'm like waiting for you to continue as well, because Tamara should really be doing some books on tape here, because I'm like, yeah, this is good. This is
so good. And that's something that has, stuck with me over the years since I first read that. It's like, that's true. I know hands down as a mating behaviors researcher that the number one thing that people crave, both genders, cross cultures, and across time, has always been confidence. So whatever you have to do, sir or madam, to keep yourself in that state is what's most important.
So important. And a lifelong journey, really.
Right. Because when you're with a partner who is like confident and ambitious and just in whatever they are, you can be an introvert and a poet and be confident. You don't have, I'm not asking people to run out there and be
on stage or something. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
No, it's about when you're in the sense of someone whose soul is grounded, you know it. And that is the sexiest thing on the planet.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter then to me whether they are running around butt ass naked, taking selfie after selfie, sleeping with whoever the fuck they want, or they are on the opposite side of the spectrum and completely, clothed and modest and in a long-term monogamous relationship. It's all healthy. They both can be engaging in self-objectification because it's coming from a place of grounded confidence. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes so much sense. And it's probably the easiest way for people to understand all of the perceived muckiness of this kind of topic. That is really when you feel most at peace and confident about who you are and what you desire and what your boundaries are and all that good stuff. Then when you approach the world with confidence, you can make the decisions to, like you said, be the introvert who's hanging out in the library or taking, I don't know, like cleavage shots on like Instagram all day.
Right.
If you come from that same place of steady confidence.
Yes, where it adds to your levels of being rather than taking it away.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if I'm doing it because I feel like I have to earn something, I'm out of alignment. If I'm doing it because this is fun and this sparks extra connection, then we're on the right track.
Yeah, absolutely.
It reminds me of that meme that I see on Facebook every once in a while, and I love it every time it comes across my newsfeed, of that chick in a full-on burqa looking at the chick in the bikini, and they're both judging each other going, oh, how sad. And I think this is opposite ends of the spectrum with the same back concept of both of those women can be engaged in healthy self-objectification.
Yeah, absolutely.
The woman who's in a full-on abaya and burqa is, saving that thing for, her man at home. And if she's in a healthy space, she's still self-objectifying, giving him that gift, like that quote just talked about. Mm-hmm. And the woman in the bikini, if she is doing it from a place of healthy confidence and doing it because it makes her feel good, then again, no problem.
Yeah. I love it.
Any final thoughts, Miss Alexandra Cavucci?
Probably, as always, too many to open. Otherwise, we'd have to open a few more podcast episodes right now. So I am good leaving it there. I feel quite satisfied myself. How about you?
I just want to tell the world how beautiful they are. That's my type 7. Like, you're so gorgeous, right as you are. Don't look for it outside yourself. Just enjoy it when it's reflected back at you. Yeah. Enjoy that wink from the universe and the sparkle that you see in that chick staring at you at Target. And enjoy giving your partner head and enjoy receiving head. Like, let's
enjoy it all.
Enjoy it all.
Life's too short.
Savor the experiences and get your objectification on. All right. Until next time, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Undressing the Spirit podcast. I pray you found some inspiration and titillation today. As always, I am forever grateful for 5-star reviews, comments, and subscriptions on iTunes and anywhere else you may be listening to this broadcast. Please note the information provided is not meant to convey professional, psychological, or medical advice. If you could use such services, I highly recommend seeking them out from someone you trust. To get in touch with me personally, please check out ariatherapy.com or talesfromatrapezoid.com. Until next time, everyone.